partner Jerry is on vacation this week, so I don't, for the sake of time, he was going to jump on. He's on vacation down to Jersey Shore, so I'm going to go solo. Hope you're okay with that. But you're on
Sure.
episode 9 of the Sports Consiglieres with Jimmy and Jerry, and I'm always looking for guests, looking for new ideas, and then I was looking at the Hall of Fame, and I saw you just did a presentation up there about your new book. So my next guest is going to be an accomplished author. He wrote about 40 books. Most recent, his background is Home Run King, the remarkable record of Hank Aaron, and helped memorialize the 50th anniversary of the breaking of Babe Ruth's record. He also has a weekly baseball newsletter, which I have for baseball enthusiasts. It's very intriguing. And also has a radio show called Travel Itch. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dan Schlossberg, originally from Passaic, now from Fair Lawn, New Jersey. But Dan, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for joining the show. And then, talk a little bit about your inspiration about the book. I know you're a Atlanta Braves fan. So just talk a little bit about you growing up in New Jersey and how you became Braves fan, and also what was your inspiration on the book?
Well, in 1957, when I was 9 years old, the Milwaukee Braves played the Yankees in the World Series. The Dodgers and Giants were leaving town, so everybody rooted for the Yankees. But the Milwaukee Braves won the World Series, so I figured they were the best team. And I remember watching the World Series with my dad on the old Zenith black and white, and he turned down the sound and told me what was going on. And I really bonded with my dad over him and baseball, and Hank Aaron led every hitter on those two teams in all 3 Triple Crown categories. And I just figured he was the best player on the best team. So I've been a Braves fan ever since.
So growing up in Passaic, what was your introduction to baseball? Like, how did you play baseball, Little League, and how did you come across, loving the game of baseball? Because I don't think you follow any other sports. You basically just follow baseball. So you never. I did my research on you. You never watched the Super Bowl. You never did watch the Stanley Cup. It's baseball 12 months a year. So how did your passion of baseball become? Where did that seed be planted? Back in Passaic, New Jersey.
Well, Passaic is northern New Jersey, so we still had, after the Mets came, we still had 2 major league teams. Both leagues were represented here. And I got to go to a lot of games, and every time the Braves came in to play the Mets, I was there. In fact, I went to the series in Yankee Stadium just recently when they came to play the Yankees, although I abhor interleague play. But it's been a lot of fun in Passaic because Passaic is a microcosm. It's a melting pot. And I had friends who rooted for every other team. So it's been fun. It still is fun. I live nearby. I'm in Fair Lawn now.
Have you gone to that new I know they're building a new stadium in Patterson. Have you, the minor league stadium? I guess the Jackals moved out of Montclair.
Right, Hinchliffe. It used to be a Negro Leagues ballpark, but they made a big mistake in restoring it because the seats are just like a bowl. There are no backs to the seats. So it makes it really uncomfortable to sit there and watch a game.
Is that active now? Are they playing in there this year?
Yeah, Jackals are there. And they're hoping to get a major league game there. It'll never happen unless they put backs in the seats.
Okay, geez. Well, I went by the Falls, and I know back in Patterson, I guess a couple of years ago, it was a day trip, and I saw that they were building the stadium. It looked pretty neat. But then you moved on to Syracuse University, and how did you envision your career as it is now when you're going to Syracuse? Obviously, Syracuse well established in journalism. A lot of big names came out of Syracuse as far as sports management, journalism, and everything else. Let's talk about your time in Syracuse and how you get your start in journalism.
Well, Syracuse is a great place to go if you're a sports fan, even baseball, although the baseball team disbanded after I left there because of snow. They had so much snow up there. Too many games were snowed out. But some good baseball players came out of there. Dave Justy, relief pitcher with the Pirates. Jim Constanti won an MVP award in 1950 with the Phillies, and others. In fact, the coach, Ted Kleinhans, was a major leaguer in the 30s with the Yankees, a pitcher. So they had a good baseball program, but it was a great sports program and a wonderful journalism program. Bob Costas came out of there, Marv Albert came out of there, and many others.
Yeah, sure.
So,
a lot of people from A lot of people, anchors from ESPN came out of there, got their first start out of there. Does the AAA team for the Blue Jays play in Syracuse? Is that the AAA team?
I think it's the Mets team now.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's the Mets of AAA in Syracuse.
And then
it was the Blue Jays.
You're delving into the book. I like how you had it structured. You talk about the book was a little bit different than any other book you read as far as the chapters. Just talk a little bit of the book, how you set the book up, and what was your thought process going through the book, like the different chapters.
It's different than any Hank Aaron biography because of what you just mentioned, but it's different than any baseball biography because the chapters were written out of sequence. I wrote it by topic rather than time, and I treated each chapter like a separate magazine article because I am primarily a magazine writer. So I thought these are the things that need to be covered. I put it together, and then that was it. The very last thing I did was an interview with Billy Aaron, Hank's widow, and that was the last chapter in the book. She was wonderful.
And I know, just doing the research for the show, 50 years, everybody kind of holds on to their memorabilia or their stuff. How difficult was it getting all this information together, especially especially baseball? You like the history of it. Baseball fans like the history of it. And I have to say, your statistical information on it is by far your recall on, especially the Braves, on baseball, on players, on stats. I mean, it is really, really impressive. So kudos to you for really knowing your craft. But like, how difficult was it just compiling all this information? A lot of people are hiding stuff. And 50 years ago, some people have passed on. Obviously, Hank Aaron has passed on. So how hard was it to write the book 50 years later?
Not that hard, because over the years I collected so much information on Aaron and did so many interviews when he was alive with Hank Aaron. Even when some of the Braves made the Hall of Fame, like Chipper Jones, and I wanted a quote, Hank Aaron called me on the phone and gave me a great quote. So he's always been terrific with me, and everybody with the Braves has been really good with me too. But I also have every Aaron book ever written. I bought them or were sent them. I review books for Sports Collectors Digest, so I got a lot of books sent to me by publishers, and that helped too. And I read them all, and also a lot of yearbooks, press guides, all kinds of stuff, and articles that I wrote myself. So I also did a biography of Aaron in 1974, 50 years ago, called Hammer and Hank, the Henry Aaron Story. So this is like a bookend biography, one 50 years ago and one this year.
Was that your first book you written about Hank Aaron? I know you had a love.
My first book of anything. That was book number one, a long time ago. And I got that original paperback signed by Hank Aaron, Dusty Baker, Darrell Evans, Davey Johnson.
Oh, geez.
Got some pretty good autographs there.
So you talk a little bit about Dusty Baker. I know you kind of formed a relationship with him over the years, and he was on the on-deck circle. We'll get into the 715 breaking a record, but how did you become friends? Well, you had a relationship with Hank Aaron, I guess, just being in the industry, and what was your relationship with Hank Aaron and also Dusty Baker? You seem like you have more of a bond with Dusty Baker, and I'm happy that he did win his World Series. I mean, it's something that was aluminum, especially a manager. And then, as a Yankee fan, the Astros have been our nemesis, and I know that they were kind of targeted for, some of the players have been targeted with the whole garbage can thing. So, and kind of Dusty Baker really addressed it and said, I don't want any retaliation. And it really worked, and it turned into for them having a great season and also winning the World Series. Let's talk a little bit about relations about Hank Aaron and Dusty Baker.
Well, Dusty Baker fortunately came on as a caretaker manager after the scandal, so he's clean. You can't blame any part of the scandal on Dusty. My relationship with him began when he was a rookie outfielder with the Braves over 50 years ago, and I wrote the very first magazine article on Dusty called "Dusty Baker, the Next Hank Aaron," and we laugh about that today because there is no next Hank Aaron. He knew it, I knew it, everybody knew it. But I befriended him as a rookie outfielder. There's a picture of Dusty with me in the book, and many other pictures from my personal collection as well, including quite a few with Aaron. And the picture of which I'm proudest is not one I took, but a picture of Jimmy Carter, Hank Aaron, the governor of Delaware, and I'm the young guy over Hank Aaron's right shoulder at age 25. So that picture made it to the book too. Dusty and I have been friends forever. He told me that when Aaron got all that hate mail, He would throw it on the floor of his locker so the other black guys could read it, but he would never talk about it.
Yeah. Well, just let's delve a little bit into Hank Aaron. I know he grew up in Mobile, Alabama. His dad worked at the ports down there, segregated South. And his dad kind of didn't really encourage him to play, from what I read in the book. And I'm in the process of reading the book. I didn't get all of it. I'm just preparing for the interview, and also just listening different information. But he didn't play baseball, and correct me if I'm wrong, in high school. He kind of, I guess, when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, that kind of inspired him. And his father really didn't encourage him to go into baseball. So it was an interesting read, I thought, on that. So,
well, it really is true. And the Brooklyn Dodgers were barnstorming on their way north in 1947 with Jackie. They stopped in Mobile, Alabama, Hank's hometown. Hank was a high school kid. He played hooky from school to go hear Jackie talk. And he befriended Jackie, and then later some of the early black Dodgers like Don Newcomb and Roy Campanella and Dan Bankhead. And he said to me that those card games they had were like college classes for anybody else. Taught him a lot about life, how to behave, how to make the most out of yourself. And it really worked.
Yeah, because he came into the sport as a young man. So, he started off, I guess, the Negro Leagues, Major League Baseball, after Jackie, they started picking the players, and Negro Leagues had a really problem just really kind of maintaining their status as far as competition. A lot of the better players moved on to Major League Baseball. So Hank Aaron went to the Indianapolis Clowns. Were they still part of the Negro League? I know they kind of branched off, and they were like an independent. They were like almost like a showcase team. So how did you get involved with the Indianapolis Clowns, Hank Aaron?
Well, they were a barnstorming team, and they offered him money. That's how he got involved. When he left home in Mobile, he only had $2 with him, a ham sandwich, a cardboard suitcase, and his sister's hand-me-down clothes that he was wearing. So from $2 to maybe a couple $100 a month, that was a big bucks for him. And he signed with the Boston Braves because they gave him $50 a month more than the New York Giants. Can you imagine if the New York Giants had come up with that $50? Hank Aaron and Willie Mays would have been teammates?
Well, exactly. Do you think that if that happened, you think that the Giants still would be in New York today? Or you think that still the draw would have gone to San Francisco?
They still would have gone because the Dodgers went and they wanted to keep that rivalry intact.
So in 53, he integrated the Sally League, I guess, which was the South Atlantic League. So, I mean, you're talking Jackie Robinson, broke the color barrier, but you're still talking about the Deep South, talking about Florida. And even when he was a member of the Milwaukee Braves, it was still segregation, still a Jim Crow South. Just talk a little bit about his experience down in the Sally League, and that's where he kind of really shined. He was the best player in the league.
Now, he won the MVP award down there that year in 1953. And the next year, he broke into the Milwaukee Braves outfield when Bobby Thompson broke his leg sliding during spring training. So Hank Aaron was in the right place at the right time, but he was a 20-year-old minor league infielder who batted cross-handed. So he made a lot of changes in his last few years. Boy, they really worked.
Yeah, they definitely did. And when he got signed by the Braves, they were in Boston. I didn't get to the part in the book, but why did they move from Boston to Milwaukee? Was it being second fiddle with the Red Sox, or what was the inspiration for them to go to Milwaukee?
They weren't drawing. I mean, the Red Sox Stadium, by the way, is only about a mile away from Braves Field, but they weren't drawing at all in Boston. They weren't a very good team either. Neither were the Red Sox at that time, although they had Ted Williams. But the Braves, wanted to go someplace fresh, and it's a good thing they did. And the Milwaukee Braves, by the way, the only team in baseball history that never had a losing season. Never. They were over 500 every year. Really?
And then I guess they won one World Series, and then the club moved to Atlanta, and I guess Hank Aaron came in at 55, and then they won their first World Series in 57, correct?
Actually, Aaron came up in 54.
Oh, 54, okay.
And they won their first World Series 3 years later, and he won the MVP award, his only one 3 years later. And it's an oddity. He never even finished second in the MVP voting any other year. He should have. He should have won a couple of those times, but he didn't. Somebody like Sandy Koufax or whatever had a better year.
And this is a little bit before my era, so it fascinates me how how good of a player he was and how overlooked he was. Because you talk, I mean, he didn't hit over. You mentioned in the book, he never hit 50 home runs once, but he's finished his career at 755 home runs at 3,700 RBIs. You talk about his on-base percentage. I know in other interviews he had, but like, just talk about like his statistical information and compared to other players, not only in his era but in the history of baseball.
Well, one thing that really rounds it up nicely is that Hank Aaron ran 12 miles further around the bases than anybody in baseball history. That talks about his total bases. He was way out in front in total bases, although he never had 400 in his. No, I'm sorry, he had 400 once. But that was the only time he had 400 total bases, which is a great accomplishment. Todd Helton, by the way, did it twice. He's going to the Hall of Fame this year. But Hank Aaron, first in extra base hits, first in total bases, first in runs batted in, and first in what I say is clean home runs. There was no hint of steroids. And if you don't agree with that, check out Barry Bonds' Hall of Fame voting. He never made the Hall of Fame. He was on the ballot for 10 years.
Yeah, well, that was the whole thing. But like, seemed like baseball turned a blind eye. I mean, you seem like a baseball historian. It seemed like baseball, in periods of time, they turned a blind eye. Now, you mentioned a little bit about Bowie Kuhn in the book. When he was looking to break the record in '74, he was at Cincinnati. Bowie Kuhn also ordered Hank Aaron to play. He wanted to break the record in Atlanta, rightly so. And then also, it just seemed like baseball, like with the steroid era, and also in, with the color barrier, they kind of miss. They could have been on the forefront, but sometimes they almost got forced to make the changes. And even Bowie Kuhn wasn't even present in Atlanta when he broke it. I mean, that's mind-boggling in 2024. It would probably be like a showcase now, be a huge buildup. And I can only imagine the pressure that he was under. But like, for the commissioner of baseball not to be there and almost like kind of disrespecting them in a way. And also, I forgot to mention the moment of silence in Cincinnati. He wanted a moment of silence on April 4th. So what was Bowie Kuhn's motivation with Hank Aaron, and like, if you could shed some light on that?
Well, first let's address that moment of silence. That was in Cincinnati, which was a very conservative town where they had persisting problems of integration, segregation. Hank Aaron asked the Reds for a moment of silence on April 4th, that was opening day, in memory of Martin Luther King Jr., who had been assassinated a couple of years earlier, and the Reds refused. So that kind of set the stage. But all the issues that hit Hank Aaron. But Bowie Kuhn ordered the Braves to play Hank Aaron at least 2 of the 3 opening games in Cincinnati. The schedule maker had the Braves opening on the road. They wanted him to break the record in Atlanta. Eddie Matthews said he was not going to play Aaron, and Kuhn threatened Matthews and the team with fines and suspensions. So Matthews relented and played Aaron, and then Aaron homered in his first at bat against Jack Billingham with 2 men on in the first inning. So that tied the record, 7-14. But then Aaron didn't homer again in the 3rd game when he played again. And so he was able to set the record in Atlanta in the first game he played there.
What was his what was Bowie Kuhn's, like, what was his deal though? Like, how come this is, you're breaking Babe Ruth's record. It's one of the, like, why wasn't he present? Not only that, I don't think the president of the United States, not only that, down in Atlanta, he sent Monty Irvin down there as representative of the of Major League Baseball. So what do you think his motivation was?
Well, in his defense, that's the only thing I can say in his defense, who knew when Hank Aaron was going to break the record? Maybe it would have taken a week. Yeah, and
that's what he said too, because he said, "What am I going to follow him around until he hits a home run?" And I think that was a statement I think Bowie Kuhn made. So I just found it particular. But just getting back to the move, I found it interesting though. Like, at that time in America, they said a black man was being carried off in Milwaukee, and then there was riots down in Little Rock, Arkansas at the same time, carried off by whites, and then there was riots down in Little Rock, Arkansas. So on a historical sense for the game and in the country, it just how sports can bring us together, and 2, at that time, how divided we were as a country.
Oh, very much so. And, the divisions, ever since the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we had big troubles, political. I mean, we're still a very politically divided country.
You think so? I don't know. I think we're a pretty good
more than
state.
ever. More than ever. I mean, with this election coming up, and both sides think it'll be a total disaster if the other side wins. Well, what can I tell you? That's why I love baseball, because baseball hopefully will take you away from all that baloney. So
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
And that's why I kind of started this podcast, because it's almost a distraction. You turn the news on, you're like, gee, what are we going on? But the only thing I will say, not to get too political, I took a class in college in Vietnam, and the professor was in Vietnam, and he said, if this country can survive 1968, it can survive any time. So I think that as bad as we are now, I think 1968 was a lot worse. But if we could just shift gears back to Atlanta. They moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta. Now, was it the team sold? Is that why they moved? And it was the first major franchise in the Southeast for any sport. Is that correct?
Well, the team was doing poorly in attendance in Milwaukee. At first, they were doing great. It did very well. In fact, they broke some National League attendance records when they first moved there. Then there was an issue over not being allowed to bring food in. The fans couldn't bring food in. The team made some mistakes in the way they treated the fans there. And the fans reacted, and they stopped coming to the games. And then Atlanta beckoned, and it was virgin territory, and the team thought they could do better, make more money. That's why they went to Atlanta, which they did in 1966. But it was good for Hank Aaron because of the altitude of Atlanta, which was first in the major leagues at that time before Denver and Arizona joined the league. And also because that ballpark was wonderful for a right-handed pull hitter, which Aaron became when he saw the ballpark.
So, and then also, I guess you mentioned in the book, I think it cost him his marriage too. Like, there was some pressure that he wasn't going to go to Atlanta, just for the fact that he kind of escaped the South. His family liked living in Milwaukee, and he I guess he just didn't want to walk through that doorway again, being in the South. And at that time, Atlanta, I think probably in the 70s, it was 600,000 people, 700,000 people. Now you're talking Atlanta's a metropolis of 10 million people, the biggest airport in the country, I think. But at that time, it was still kind of recovering from. It was relatively a southern city. So.
Yeah, pretty much so. And that was also before Ted Turner brought the superstation down there and bought the Braves. That was in 1976. So Atlanta was really a small market city, as Milwaukee had been. And that's why Hank Aaron never got the publicity, Willie Mickey or the Duke.
And one of the poignant parts of the book I wrote down is it said, I want them to remember Beirut, but I want them to forget Hank Aaron. So I thought that was pretty poignant, that he respected Ruth's record, but he also, in the same breath, wanted people to remember that, who Hank Aaron was. And I think you wrote that in the book.
Yeah, he's a very modest guy, humble, almost introverted, kind of the opposite of Willie Mays. Was very flamboyant, charismatic. Hank Aaron was kept to himself, and he even told his kids, he said, I'm just a working guy like any other working guy. I'm not a celebrity, and I want to be treated like a normal person. And
you mentioned in the book, in that winter break, though, he could have broke the record, I guess, in 73, but they had a bunch of rainouts.
Yeah, one rainout. Yeah.
And then you just take some of the listeners that off season. I mean, imagine, I guess he got the most mail ever as a single person in the history, but just the pressure on him. And you're talking, he's not a young man. He was at the time 39, 40 years old. So you just reference the book, what was what was going on with Hank Aaron from that winter break, that winter off season.
He was anxious to get it over with. In fact, the very first thing he said after he broke the record on April 8th, 1974, he said, I just thank God it's all over with. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get it over with, done, because people couldn't say that he wasn't the home run king when he was.
Yeah, but when did he realize that he could break the record? When did he realize that this was attainable? That was something that he could attain. Like, how far back, before 74, did he realize that this might be a possibility?
Once he passed Willie Mays' record for home runs. Willie Mays was second on the list to Babe Ruth. Once he passed Mays, he started to really think about breaking the record. And again, that Atlanta Stadium was called the launching pad because so many home runs were hit there. In 1971, Hank Aaron hit 40 home runs. He was one of there were 3 Braves who had 40 home runs that year. It was the first time 3 teammates had 40 in the same year, along with Darrell Evans and Davey Johnson. Aaron hit 40. Once he had that 40 home run season, he knew he was close and he could do it in a couple more years.
And your reference in the book, 444 and the number 44. So it was what, the 4th game in the 4th month?
Right.
So
4th month, a year that ends in 4 against a pitcher wearing 44, while he wore number 44. There are lots of 4s involved.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, Dan, are you big in numerology and that sort of thing and tying in? Because I'm just doing research for this interview. It seems like, you have a lot of statistical information, but you also seem like you tie a lot of the numbers together, which I thought that was interesting, the 444 by 44. So
I love oddities and ironies, Jim, and anything with numbers certainly qualifies too. Roger Maris had a bunch of things with 9, the number 9, which was his uniform number. There are 9 letters in Roger Maris's name, stuff like that. So I love it,
Yeah.
And Aaron took 44. He wore number 5 as a rookie. He took 44 as a second-year player.
And Al Dowling gave up the pitch that he hit the home run. What happened to Al Dowling? I've heard a lot of things from Al Dowling, but like, what happened after? What was his career like? I'm just curious to know. I've heard different things about him, but like,
he was a good pitcher and a good guy, and he became famous at giving up that home run, as famous as Ralph Branca did giving up Bobby Thompson's shot heard around the world. But Downing was a good pitcher, not a Hall of Famer by any chance, by any stretch of the imagination. He was a left-handed pitcher who was good. He was with the Yankees. He was pretty good with the Yankees, too.
Yeah, I think he was mentioned in one of the documentaries where they saw him on one of the documentaries.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so. And then how do you think...
A Jersey guy, by the way. He's from Trenton.
He's from Trenton?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I learned something new here. So, but actually, I'm learning a lot from you. So I really appreciate you coming on. But like,
Okay.
Aaron, how did his stats line up with the all-time greats? And where does he fit? I know you're a Braves fan. You wrote 2 books about him. But how does his stats line up with, the elite players or the best players in the game or the history of the game?
Well, he accomplished so many unusual things. For example, he was the first player with 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. But if you take away his home run total from the number of hits, he would still have over 3,000 hits. And that's pretty impressive right there. He hit over 305. His lifetime average was 305, but he lost 5 points playing in Milwaukee the last 2 years. His average had been 310. Better than Mays or Mantle, by the way, which I always bring up as a point of comparison. Willie Mays never won an RBI crown. Aaron won 4 of them, I believe. So Aaron led each of the 3 legs of the Triple Crown at least twice, but never all 3 simultaneously. He never won a Triple Crown. And I think that might have been one of his few regrets. But his stats are great. His stats are great. He didn't pitch. He wasn't Shohei and he wasn't Babe Ruth, but he was a fabulous player. And he was versatile. He played the infield too, and when the team needed him, he was there.
So what do you think? Why do you think he was so overlooked? It was a small market? Do you think it was his race? I mean, like a lot of like
both.
I mean,
certainly racism. I mean, 9 voters didn't vote for him for the Hall of Fame. The all-time home run king, you're not going to vote for him for the Hall of Fame? That's ridiculous. Those 9 voters should have had their credentials taken away.
And I know he said he wanted to be the commissioner of baseball. He wanted to manage. I know Jackie Robinson said, he wanted to have a coach down at third base, but it wasn't really till Ted Turner took the team over that he kind of got welcomed back. So he went to Milwaukee. I guess he finished his career in Milwaukee, had 755 home runs, and it seemed like it really wasn't a good ending for him. He seemed like he was a Brave and finished with the Brewers. I mean, and what was the end of his career like? And then how did Ted Turner welcome him back into the fold down in Atlanta?
Well, in 74, his last season in Atlanta, he said to the Braves, I would like to be an executive with some kind of authority to do things. Braves did not come through with that offer. So Aaron said, well, then trade me back to Milwaukee because Bud Selig was the owner, and he was a longtime friend of Aaron's from their Milwaukee days, way back when. And the Braves obliged. They traded Aaron to Milwaukee. He was a DH for a couple of years. He had 20 more home runs with the Brewers. And then Ted Turner came along, bought the Braves, and offered Hank Aaron the job as farm director and gave him a lot of authority. In fact, Aaron cut 2 men of significance, one of them being Brian Snitker, who was a minor league catcher who couldn't hit. Aaron made him a minor league coach. And the rest is history with Brian Snitker. He's been there for 48 years. And the other guy he cut was Larry Aaron, his oldest son, who couldn't hit. And he said to Larry, get your education degree, become a teacher, which Larry did, taught in the Milwaukee system. And he was also a scout for the Brewers for 24 years.
No, it's interesting. And then Dusty Baker, how much do you think he's got left in the tank as a manager? You think he's gonna, he's gonna be a Hall of Fame. Cooperstown's waiting for him when he's done. How much longer do you think he's gonna manage?
Well, he's not managing anymore. He's with the Giants as an advisor now.
Okay.
I don't think he'll go back to managing. I mean, if perchance the Giants offer him a job, which I don't think they will because Bob Melvin is up there now, he might consider it. But then again, Dusty is 75 years old now.
Yeah.
So who's going to offer him a job to start as a manager? Unless there's a team that wants a caretaker manager, for a couple of months, like maybe the Yankees. You never know.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps. Some team that's struggling might want somebody to put fannies in the seats. So it's hard to tell what's going to happen in baseball.
Yeah. And then Hank Aaron, I guess they have a stamp coming out.
Yes, there's an Aaron stamp coming out on July 31st. And I think that's a wonderful tribute by the post office. First time they've done something right in years.
Well, I guess, he's getting so much mail back in 73 and 74. He probably kept some of these, probably made a lot of money for the postal service. But
yes.
Just just finishing up here, but I kind of want to switch since you're a Braves fan, and it's kind of unique with the big three, Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddox. Are you surprised they only walked away with one World Series in that 10-year period they were together? And was there one that kind of got away from them that you thought, either 96 with the Yankees or 97 with the Marlins, against the Marlins?
Actually, both years. You hit the nail right on the head. 96 for sure, and 97. 97, I blame totally on Eric Gregg, the fat, out-of-shape umpire who didn't know the difference between a ball and a strike. Livan Hernandez, who pitched that game for the Marlins that won the pennant in the playoffs, had 15 strikeouts in that game. The first World Series game he pitched, he had 2 strikeouts and 8 walks. That tells you the difference. That was when Randy Marsh was the home plate umpire. I mean, Eric Gregg was a terrible umpire, and I was glad to see him leave the game.
Well, I remember Eric Gregg. He was on a heavy set. I guess I think he mentioned in another interview when John McSherry died, he kind of left. John tragically he had a heart attack and passed away on the field. Yes. Eric Gregg, I think, left and tried to get himself in shape. Because listen, you're traveling a lot. You're not eating well or anything else. So I don't know if Eric Gregg ever recovered from that John McSherry incident. I don't know if he ever came back. I mean, you probably would know better than I would. So, but I know those two are very close.
Good example. But 96, the Yankees, there were just so many little things that went wrong in that series. It happens. I mean, Jim Leyritz, give me a break.
Yeah, well, I think that Waller's throwing that changeup sped up Leyritz's bat, and then they really had him on the ropes. And to beat the Yankees in '96 at home, and Andrew Jones is coming out party, and just having his little smirk on his face as 19-year-old kid from Curacao, came out of oblivion. It was like, and then I'm a Yankee fan, so I suffered through the Don Mattingly years and the Steinbrenner and everything, the documentary. Yes. So I mean, so that really definitely, and then Joe Torre, a Braves player, we thought he was going to be a joke as a man after leaving Buck Showalter. But I mean, and listen, to beat that big three, I mean that was that was a good team. That was a very good team.
Yeah, the Braves did not have a good bullpen then. That was their one weakness, and that really showed.
Yeah, Andrew Jones, I know he was the first Brave to have 51 home runs. I guess he had the most home runs any Brave. You think he's a Hall of Famer? I know he's.
He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer.
You think he's that good?
I mean, look at it this way. there are only a handful of outfielders that won 10 consecutive Gold Gloves. Griffey, Mays, Clemente, Ichiro, and Andrew Jones. Those are your 5. Those are the only 5 who ever won 10 straight Gold Gloves. Well, Andrew Jones belongs in the Hall of Fame because on top of the 10 straight Gold Gloves, 434 home runs, give me a break. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. I know his batting average wasn't great because his last couple of years he really let down, including his time with the Yankees. But he was a Hall of Famer before that.
Yeah, and I know you said the same thing about Fred McGriff, and he ended up getting in. And you even said about the labor stoppage really affected his career. So,
right, he would have had over 500 home runs. And how about Dale Murphy with 398?
I mean, Dale Murphy was a heck of a player. Is he in the Hall of Fame? I'm not sure. Is he?
No, he's not. He should be.
Yeah.
He should join Fred and Andrew. And Gary Sheffield's another one.
Well, I think Sheffield, he might got caught up in the steroid dragnet too. So I think he was.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah. So,
509 home runs, not bad.
Yeah. Oh, listen, he was a phenomenal player. But it just. You even mentioned Leo Mazzoni. You thought that as a pitching coach
Yeah, there are no coaches in the Hall of Fame, and that is a big void that needs to be filled. There should be coaches. Johnny Sain should be in the Hall of Fame. Dave Duncan. There are a whole bunch that should be considered. And another category, scouts. There are no scouts in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Why not? Marvin Miller does not belong in the Hall of Fame at all. He did not help the game of baseball. He helped the players. He didn't help the game. And I can give you a million reasons why. He does not belong in the Hall of Fame. Give his spot to a scout or a coach who does deserve it.
And I guess switching gears back to Henry Aaron, like back in 2021, they were going to have the All-Star game in Atlanta, and due to some social programs, Major League Baseball decided to move it, and that was like a real opportunity. Like we talked about before, for Major League Baseball to really kind of showcase Henry Allen. For them moving the All-Star game, and the year that he passed away, if I'm correct, do you think that was a right decision by baseball, or what was your opinion about Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game away from Atlanta? And the year that
I think Bob Manfred should have been fired for doing that, and he's even admitted that he made a mistake, and the All-Star game will be there next year, 2025.
So are they going to have any sort of is there any pre-planning on what they're talking about doing, or?
There will be. There's a Hank Aaron exhibit at the Atlanta History Center. It opened April 9th of this year. It's going to run right through the All-Star game. So it's going to be a very big deal. It's beautifully done, by the way. So people that go to Atlanta should make it a point to see. Okay.
And then who would be on your Atlanta Braves Mount Rushmore? Obviously Hank Aaron, but if you had to fill the faces with another 3 players, who, as a lifelong Braves fan, would you like to see in that Mount Rushmore? I think that deserves to be up there with Hank Aaron.
Good question. Hard to answer. Warren Spahn, certainly. 363 wins, most by any lefty in baseball history, most by any pitcher since World War II. Maybe Eddie Matthews, because of all the home runs that he had as well. He's also in the 500 home run club. And people will say, over Chipper Jones? I think so. Probably. It's going to be a close call there. Yeah, but over Chipper Jones. And the other spot, it's really, really hard. There's so many names that come to mind. Maybe Andrew Jones. Maybe Dale Murphy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, one of the pitchers. I mean, I know you mentioned Tony Pendleton. He in some interviews in the past. So, I mean, he was a nice little player.
Yeah, but he wasn't there long enough. How about Glavine with his 521 seasons?
Yeah, so that's true too. But I know you're doing a lot. You have any more signings coming up, or anything promotions?
Actually, yes. Baseball Hall of Fame. I'll be on the street in front of Willis Money Books Saturday, July 20th from 11 to 1, signing my Hank Aaron book. Okay. And then is that the best weekend up there in Cooperstown? Induction weekend. Oh, it's by far the best. If you love baseball, make it a point to come up. It's great. There's no traffic on Main Street. It's pedestrian only. They have vendors on both sides of the street. Many former players signing things. It's fabulous.
And I know you have a show. I guess it's called. You're doing a bunch. I know you have the newsletter. You have a Facebook radio show. Is that still going on? Travel Itch.
Travel Itch Radio.
Okay.
Travel Itch Radio is the name of the show. It's a podcast. It's on Thursdays live at 5. I've got one coming up every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern time. And it covers just different travel topics, but it's a lot of fun.
And then for a baseball enthusiast, what would you say is a have-to place to go to? Like obviously Cooperstown, All-Star Weekend. But where else would you see something like a stadium or an event or something for a baseball diehard to see?
Well, definitely go to spring training because the parks are smaller, they're more intimate, much easier to get pictures, autographs, really have a baseball experience. And the pressure is not on the players at that time. So they're more relaxed, personable. They'll have a great time. Go to spring training in Florida or Arizona or both.
Okay. And then just to promote the book, what do you want the reader to take away from after reading the book? Like, what was your saying? What message did you want to deliver after the reader reading the book?
Well, in 2 words, consistency counts. Hank Aaron was Mr. Consistent. Never hit more than 47 home runs. Almost always hit at least 40 every year. Humble, low-key, honest, personable, affable. Was a wonderful human being, and that's why it's called The Remarkable Record of Hank Aaron, not just an athlete, but an advocate of civil rights as well.
Yeah. And are you working on anything else? Any other books?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. I'm working on one called my Here's the Pitch newsletter, which I do Saturday and Friday every week, twice a week. That's going to become a book, Best of Here's the Pitch. Going to have an edition coming out in November. And then next April, my big book, The New Baseball Bible, 2025 edition, totally redone. It's going to be out next April.
All right. Well, listen, Dan, I can't thank you enough, and thank you for making it easy for me. This has been great, and I wish my partner Jerry's back. I'd like to invite you back on, in the near future when Jerry's available. But I want you to thanks for your time. Good luck with the book. I'm in the process of reading it. It's a great read. It really is, and I think I have probably some of your baseball almanacs in my parents' attic somewhere, because I was going through just preparing for the interview, and I think I have a bunch of them, and so I had to dig those out. But the information is great. Where can people find you? And then I know you're going to be at All-Star Weekend. Where else can they find you if they want some more?
I'll be covering the All-Star game, and then I'm going straight to Cooperstown, and I'll be signing on the street, as I mentioned, on Saturday, July 20th from 11 to 1, right near the theater marquee. Last year I signed with Jack Clark. I don't know who my signing partner is going to be this year, but hopefully another player. And it should be a lot of fun. But that's all I can say. I have a lot of signing things coming up in New Jersey in September, by the way.
So that would be on your website?
It'll be on the website or on my Facebook page, more likely my Facebook page.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Dan, thanks for your time. I know you got a show coming up in a couple of hours. You have your own podcast, but thanks for coming on. I'll definitely send you the recording on it. But this episode was produced by Chop Sports Media, Dave Sturcio, and also my son Jimmy Jr. helps me out here with some of the correspondence. But Dave, if you can hang on for a minute, I'll sign off and then we'll talk off camera. But catch us on social media at Sports Consiglieres on Facebook and also on Instagram. We'll be back in a few weeks. Enjoy the summer. Check out Dan up in Cooperstown All-Star Weekend. This is episode number 9 off. Thanks, Dan, for your time, and I really appreciate the interview. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, you're welcome.